Hey everybody, Shark Scrapper here. You're probably thinking to yourself, why is Shark wearing the goofy hat? And why is Shark at a marina, for goodness sake? Well, I'm here because today we're gonna go out and tag some sharks. Well, that's the plan anyway, if the sharks cooperate. You never really know for sure, but anyway. So I'm going to be here with the folks from the University of Miami Shark Research and Conservation Program, and we're going to see if we can tag some sharks today. Come on, let's dive in and see what we're going to catch. We have a bit of a ride before we get to where we're going to put out the drum lines and try to catch these sharks for tagging. The SRC team is busy getting all the gear ready. So how about let's go learn a bit more about what we're doing here. Now, I was fortunate enough to spend some time talking with Chelsea yesterday about the tagging program, so let's go see what she can tell us. I want to introduce Chelsea. She is going to tell us all about the tags and the tag that's on a leahy kai. Chelsea, take it away.
Hi everyone, so I'm here with Ernie and we are talking about satellite tags. So one of the main tags that we put out on our sharks is called a spot tag. So that's smart, position, or temperature. So this is going to tell us where sharks are going, but only when they break the surface of the water. So it has this antenna. This is going to go on the fin of a large shark, and every time that fin breaks the surface of the water, it's going to send a transmission to a satellite, and it's going to give us that position. So it has sensors on here that tells us when the tag is dry and when to send signals. We also have a pop-off satellite tag that goes onto something like a hammerhead or a sandbar shark or a blacktip shark, and it's actually going to stay on the shark for a set amount of time. So we have these set to 180 days, and after 180 days, it's going to pop off and float to the surface. So during that 180 days, it's been collecting temperature, depth, and reporting where the shark has been going, floats to the surface, and then it's going to give us all of that data, and we can see where the shark likes to spend time. So the tag that went on your Great Hammerhead is a little different than these two tags. It's actually kind of a hybrid between the two. So it looks more similar to this one, but it's not going to pop off, and it's actually more of a spot tag, giving us her location every time she breaks the surface. But it was kind of in this little torpedo shape, but a little larger. So that one was a unique tag that we've had for a while. We haven't had the opportunity to put it on a large shark. And when we caught her, we thought, you know what, let's put this tag out. We weren't really hopeful because it was pretty old. It's not something that we purchase. And it's been transmitting really often. She dove down, went straight down to Cuba, spent some time there, popped up and went straight to the Bahamas, where she currently is still feeding. So it's really interesting to see where she's going, because normally we don't actively track hammerhead sharks. So it's really interesting to be learning from her.
That is so cool. Chelsea, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to get into sharks?
So I've always wanted to be a marine biologist, but I didn't know that I wanted to study sharks until I was an undergrad, and I took an ichthyology course. So that's the study of fishes. So we learned a lot about sharks because they are fish and their importance in the ecosystem. And I kind of figured if I'm going to study something, it should be something that will have a really big impact on a lot of species. So sharks are really important because they are apex predators, and they have that top-down control on their ecosystem. So they're keeping predators below them in check. They're kind of weeding out sick and unhealthy fish species and keeping populations from overexpanding, keeping our healthy reefs.
It's just like us scrappers. They're keeping the ocean healthy, okay? So that's what we got to do. We got to keep the streets healthy and keep the landfills healthy by getting all that scrap out of there and getting it where it belongs. Frequently hear stories about how sharks are at risk. There's challenges to their populations. But we know so little about sharks, so can you help us better understand what's going on there?
Yeah, so one of the biggest threats to sharks right now is overfishing. So there's something called the shark fin trade, where unfortunately they're being overfished, harvested at, it's estimated 75 to 100 million sharks a year. Just
Holy
a year.
cow!
Yeah, it's a huge number.
Oh my God!
Are being killed for their fins. So in Asian cultures, it's seen as a delicacy. So shark fins are made up of these rays. So there's not a lot of meat in the fins. So essentially it kind of turns into like a noodle, and they make it into shark fin soup, and then they flavor it with like chicken or beef broth. But it's seen as a symbol of status. So at weddings, they'll serve it. It's just kind of something that's been in their culture, but it's having a huge negative effect on shark populations. And like I said before, they're so important for our ocean ecosystems. So seeing those collapses are having a lot of negative effects on reefs. So you'll see a reef that is pretty unhealthy, maybe overgrowing with algae, or it's bleached, and you're not going to see a lot of sharks, probably none. And then you're going to see more algae-eating fish species, and it's not going to be a healthy, balanced ecosystem.
Got it. Now, does this finning trade indiscriminately go after any shark they get? I mean, a whale shark could probably make a few thousand gallons of soup. So, or are there specific species they're going after?
I mean, the bigger the fin, obviously, the more profitable. So we'll see, you know, sandbar sharks are targeted because they have pretty large fins. Whale sharks, they probably have the highest value for their fins because, you know, they're the largest fish. So they have the largest fins. It's really terrible.
So, what are you learning from all the data that you're getting from all these tags, and what other kind of research do you do with the sharks?
So another threat that sharks are facing is global climate change. So obviously the shark fin trade has a huge impact on them, but then also they're losing habitat due to warming oceans. Their prey species are moving. And then also, you know, we have our regular commercial fishing. They can get caught in long lines or nets, just like a lot of other species like sea turtles, marine mammals. And so to protect sharks, we have to first figure out where they're going, where do they spend their time, because we can't really, it's pretty useless to put a marine protected area in a place where the sharks aren't, or the species aren't spending their time. So my dissertation is focused on not only sharks, but looking at other marine megafauna, seeing where all these species are spending their time, figuring out where those hotspots are, and then are those hotspots protected? So are they within marine protected areas? How much do they move around? Where are their migration pathways? Things like that. Because then that's information that we can take to policymakers and say, hey, you know, the Florida Keys Marine Sanctuary is within this area, but we're seeing more species, you know, 1 mile to the right or something like that. And then, you know, we've seen a lot of success with species such as the humpback whale. Scientists figured out where they were migrating and when, and that's when they changed a lot of the shipping routes, and they changed the speed, and it actually helped some of those populations bounce back. So it's all about understanding where sharks are moving and why.
Well, now we understand a lot more about the tags and why these programs are important. But what's with all this stuff out here, buoys and lines, and well, these are called drum lines. So let's learn about those.
Is our drumline system. So basically the drum is this about 30-40 pound weight. It's just filled with concrete. Actually, if you've seen, you know, the top of a piling that looks like a little Hershey Kiss, the dock, that like cap, we actually just took those and filled them with concrete, and it makes this perfect drum. So then you can see we have our line, and at the top floats, and then once we get out there, we'll actually attach an additional float, a poly ball, that's also, you know, big and round, so that will have a number on it. That's how we know we set 10 lines. We can see 1 through 10. That's how we keep track of the order. We'll have it written nice and large. So we'll deploy these lines, and this is going to sit at the bottom of the ocean. So it's really heavy, and when we're throwing them out, we have to make sure that they are landing nice and flat. So they sit on the bottom, and then attached to it, this is where we will put our main line. So this is on a swivel, and so it can actually go 360 degrees.
There you go. Okay.
So that's important because we want the shark to be able to swim, right? So while they're waiting for us to come back and get them, they're just swimming around. Most sharks are ram ventilators, so they need to swim to breathe. So they'll just swim around with their mouth open, passing that water over their gills. So what the whole process is going to look like if we are lucky enough to catch a shark.
So we've gotten out on site. We've put out the 10 lines, and we're now getting our safety briefing and our assignments. Yes, we all get to help out a little bit and do our part in this. You can see over on the left, Chelsea is getting some tags ready. Let's take a closer look at that. So Chelsea's just going through the tags that she has ready to go. She's checking the hardware and the bolts. By the way, they use medical grade bolts and latches for attaching these things to the sharks. So it's a very interesting process when they're actually putting the tags on. But you know, you got to be ready to go, because when you get a shark up on the platform, you got to work fast. Turns out our first catch of the day was 2 scuba divers that got blown away from their dive boat, and after we deployed our drum lines, we went around and picked them up and we took them back over to their dive boat. No, we did not take any DNA, blood samples, or tag them. Well, it wasn't long before the excitement started. Out of that set of 10, we landed 4 sharks, 2 great hammerheads, a nurse shark, and a really big bull shark. Now the conditions were pretty rough, so after that set we decided to relocate. But here was some of the fun from these sharks. Now apparently there are some regulations about video recording while the shark is on the line. So I have to give a lot of credit to the photographer from the university that was out there. Nola took these shots. I am very grateful for her providing them to me. Her full credentials are in the description down below. So I want to take a moment and talk about this particular picture. Nola did a great job with this shot because it captures the essence of pretty much everything that has to go on when the shark is up on deck. Now that is the greatest risk for the shark, is when it's up on the platform. You can see this was the big bull shark that we recovered. I'm holding a wand that is a shower. My job was to keep the shark wet from head to toe. That meant that I was keeping everybody wet from head to toe, but that's very important so the shark does not overheat. Now the thing that you see going into the shark's mouth is a pump that's pumping seawater over the shark's gills so they don't suffocate while they're on deck. Now Chelsea is holding the front of the shark down. You know, what does she weigh? 98 pounds dripping wet, and that shark is probably 500 pounds. Dr. Hammerschlag is got his hand on the shark's head to steady the shark from trying to get too rambunctious. You got 2 more of the grad students in the back stabilizing the shark, and then the other parts of the team will come in, and one person will take blood samples, another person, they roll the shark over, they take a muscle tissue sample, so they have to do a little tiny incision and take out some muscle tissue, and then another one will take a pair of tin snips and they cut off a little chunk of the shark's dorsal fin. There's no sensory perception up there, so the shark doesn't feel it at all, but they use that to send off to the lab for DNA samples. And of course you got to measure these things, so you're measuring the nose to the tail and the nose to the base of the tail and the girth of the shark and recording the sex of the shark, and then when a tag goes on it you have to record the tag number, and another member of the team is writing all this stuff down. So there's a lot of yelling and a lot of numbers and a lot of teamwork going on, because you got to get the shark back in the water as fast as possible. As you could see, it was a little rough out there, and Dr. Hammerschlag decided that for safety purposes we would move closer inshore. So while we're doing that, I'm going to take advantage of the downtime and have a little chat with Dr. Hammerschlag about this program. Hey everybody, this is Dr. Neil Hammerschlag. He runs the Shark Research and Conservation Program here at the University of Miami. Neil, thank you so much for having us out today.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing out here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we found today?
So the day is not done, but so far we have been very successful. We went offshore first. Conditions were a little rough, but we were still able to sample, tag, collect data from 4 sharks. We got 1 nurse shark, then we got a huge bull shark, and then 2 great hammerheads, an endangered species. It was pretty exciting.
Very cool. So Neil, what got you involved in sharks?
Yeah, I've been studying sharks now for, I would say, about 20 years. And, it started off just as a passion for the ocean. It wasn't shark specific. I just wanted to, as growing up, I loved the oceans. And then in school, I studied science and figured to combine, my love for the oceans with my interest in science as a career. So I studied marine science at school. And then during my breaks, kind of my holiday breaks, I wanted to get kind of hands-on experience working with different research groups in marine science, and I did some in studying corals and jellyfish and did field classes, and I just happened upon an experience studying sharks, helping a research group, and I was totally blown away by that work, educated myself about it, and realized that shark populations were in trouble, were in jeopardy, and we knew so little about it. Plus, just experiencing that, getting the hands-on experience was just so inspiring to me that I kind of decided that's going to be my area of work, to understand the ecology of sharks, to better help conserve, protect them, and ever since then I've been kind of full throttle.
So Neil, how long has this program existed here at the university?
So I established the program as it is today about 12 years ago, and the goal of that program was to not only do cutting-edge research focused on sharks, but to also provide hands-on research experiences to children and people from the public in marine science through the shark research, to kind of gain an appreciation for sharks, but also an appreciation and inspiration for the need for science and careers in science.
And are you only studying sharks in the Florida area, or do you go globally?
I have, together with my collaborators, we have projects here in Florida, but also in Bahamas, further up the coast off of North Carolina, New England, and then also projects in South Africa, in the Western Cape of South Africa, the Galapagos Islands, and even Brazil.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, Chelsea did a good job of explaining to us the challenges that sharks face from overfishing and from environmental damage and climate change and stuff. Are there any things that we can do as just the average citizen, other than donating to, shark research programs? What else can we do to try to help sharks?
The average person can do a tremendous amount to help sharks. First and foremost, educate yourself about sharks. Read up about sharks, watch documentaries from reputable organizations and reputable sources where you can learn more about them, because the more you know, the more you can help. The next thing I would do is, once you've educated yourself, is to, potentially to contact conservation organizations. Some of them have action alerts, like where you can sign up to get notifications of when there's a petition you can sign, or when you can make a comment to the government to enact legislation that can help support threatened shark species based on the best science available. Some of those groups, you can find online and sign up for. The other thing you can do is just in your daily life is be a little more conscious about the environment. It all helps sharks. For example, reduce your plastic use, and something that's also very important that I know is near and dear to shark scrapper is recycle. That's really key aspect of it as well. Anything that helps the environment ultimately helps sharks.
You mentioned plastics. Do you find plastics in sharks too?
We haven't analyzed plastics yet in sharks. It is something we are collecting data on. We're going to investigate that.
Okay.
But I think the biggest thing is we do see a lot of plastic pollution in the ocean, and we know that that plastic ends up into the food web, and since sharks at the top of the food web, it makes a lot of, seems likely that, you know, basically not only pieces of plastics, but toxins that are associated with plastic might work their way up to the food web to sharks.
Gotcha. One of your researchers that's out here today mentioned that her work is in heavy metals in the sharks. How are the heavy metals getting into the sharks?
Yeah, so there are various ways that toxic heavy metals can end up in sharks. The biggest way is through the food web, actually, based on what the sharks are eating. So there's, for example, there can be pollution sources that might be point source pollution, like a power plant on the water that's producing, you know, waste. But, you know, even in places like China, which are burning coal for fuel, that's putting, you know, mercury into the atmosphere, you know, that can actually travel through the atmosphere and get deposited here off of Florida, and basically, you know, through atmospheric deposition, but also, you know, through just pollution coming in through, you know, rivers or canals, pumping it into the water. Basically, it can get consumed by and taken up by microorganisms that get eaten by smaller organisms that are eaten up by, you know, small fish, eaten by bigger fish, and eventually eaten by sharks. And certain heavy metals like mercury actually is retained in the tissues. You can't excrete that, and so you know, the more and more you eat of it, the more and more it accumulates.
Yeah.
And the higher up you go in the food web, the more other things that you're eating that's accumulated, and so it tends to what's called bioaccumulate in shark tissue.
Sure. Well, Neil, what else you want to tell us about the program or the university before we wrap up here?
You know, the work that we're doing is essentially, the work that we're doing is all about generating the science that policymakers can use to help make informative decisions about how best to conserve shark populations. Additionally, the data we're collecting helps us understand the ecological roles of sharks, the importance in the ecosystem, and ultimately, you know, understanding how global change, like climate change and urbanization and overfishing, is impacting sharks. What does that mean for the ecosystem, and how can we both conserve these animals, but, you know, also, you know, at the same time, economically use the natural resources in a sustainable way. And while we do that type of science, we also try to help educate while we also do the science, we also try to educate the public about, you know, the importance of sharks, the importance of science, and also make science cool. Because a big issue now is a lot of people, you know, growing up, kids, a big problem now is a lot of kids these days, you know, they'd rather, you know, clean their bedroom than have to solve a math problem. And so what we're trying to do is inspire kids to kind of care about science. So, and to do that through exposing them to some really cool species like sharks and the science, and cool science about sharks, to kind of get them engaged in STEM.
Yeah, and I think it's great that, so we're out on a citizen science cruise right now, and there were 3 kids
yeah.
that they're not even in college yet, and they're out here experiencing this.
Yeah, and that's part of the goal, and just the general public, you know, to get them aware of sharks and ways that they can help.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you so much.
Human head.
Oh, a human head, cool.
All right, next volunteer.
No, we're not wrapping this one. That's a bag of,
Never mind.
That's chickens. No, that's sandwiches.
It turns out that in addition to scuba divers and sharks, the other 2 things that get recovered sometimes are square grouper, which is fisherman slang for packages of drugs that have been dropped off by drug boats that are then going to get picked up by other drug boats, you know, the illegal kind. And then besides square grouper, you have voodoo. There's an interesting population that believe in that in the Miami area, And so we have recovered a voodoo package. Okay, so it wasn't a human body or part, but we just disturbed some voodoo ritual apparently.
Sophia, you've got 7 days of voodoo on you, buddy.
No, I didn't open it.
Been nice knowing ya.
Yeah, redirect energy now.
That's your job.
You gotta hit the button, you gotta get on this ball.
Back into the ocean. We do not receive you. Back into the ocean.
Yeah, so apparently that's some voodoo ritual floating away again. It was a long day and a lot of work, and I tell you, I'm glad that Dr. Hammerschlag has a bunch of young graduate students to help him with that, because that is some very physically demanding work. I pulled in one of the sharks, and it'll get your attention, and then holding those sharks down and getting all the samples and stuff, it's just a lot of work. I think that voodoo must have had some effect on us, because we didn't catch any more sharks after that. So our count for the day: 2 scuba divers, 2 great hammerheads, 1 nurse shark, 1 bull shark, and 1 package of voodoo. I want to thank all of the folks from the SRC, especially Dr. Hammerschlag, Chelsea, and Nola, the photographer. But most especially, I want to thank all of you, the donors who have so graciously given your money to the Shark Scrapper Shark Adoption Project. Last year we raised enough money to donate for tagging a lihikai, and this year we're trying to get up enough money that we can donate to have 2 sharks tagged. That money goes to support not just the tagging, but those programs that you heard Dr. Hammerschlag talk about, the citizen scientists, getting young people out there, kids that can't afford to pay to come out and see this kind of stuff. Our funds help them experience what's going on and get interested in science. I can't thank all of you enough for your donations. We're off to a great start with Barry West and George Parsons donating through the PayPal account at paypal.me/sharkscrapper. We've got a $500 donation from Nick Burns again this year, which I'll be matching. So come on, anybody want to try to beat Nick? Plus, we've got our Patreon members, our whale sharks, Roger Adams, Jay Wilson, and Elliot Teeters, Andrew Merskell, our tiger shark, and 2 hammerheads, Laura Furchess and Ulrich. I can't thank you all enough. And for those of you that are getting ready to donate, remember there's 3 ways that you can do this. You can throw some money at the PayPal account, paypal.me/sharkscrapper. You can send me an old-fashioned check to the mailing address that's on my About page. Or you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/sharkscrapper. The links are down in the description below. We are on our path for 2 for 22, and I want to thank everybody that has already donated and all of you that will in the future. Let's make it happen so that we can continue to support this great work at the University of Miami. I'll see you all on the next one.